Welcome to the Flaman Connect podcast, a podcast focused on the individual pieces that make up the larger community of people together, doing what's right and making a difference. Today's hosts, we have myself, Trevor, Regan Kuntz, and Mitch Flaman.
Okay, best concert you've ever been to?
Oh, wow. Best concert I've ever been to was Papa Roach.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and a couple of reasons. I love Papa Roach, but the way that guy interacts with the whole show, he just out of the blue just started climbing through the stands. And like he'd pick an empty seat in an aisle and then he just started climbing. And then all of a sudden he had there was two lights. There was like a red one and a blue one, and he split the crowd in half. So he pulled all the kids up on stage, which was so cool. And they're like arguably too young. They shouldn't have been at this concert, but he didn't care. He got all the kids up on stage, and then he made the entire floor, half it was red and half it was blue, and he started an entire floor mosh pit. It was, and I'm standing in the stands, I'm like, how did you do that? Like that. Anyway, Papa Roach was my favorite concert. I've been to a lot, but that's the first one that comes to mind that was like, I'll never forget
Trust
that.
your first answer.
Yeah.
Trev?
I think my favorite one was Meatloaf.
Really?
Yeah.
Where at?
Oh, that would
It
be
was
good.
at Northlands Coliseum.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
What year?
Oh, it was, no, I can't remember now. It was right when Welcome to the Neighborhood was released.
Oh, yeah.
So he was on that tour, but he had his daughter. He's like, my daughter needed a summer job, so I asked her to come along. So she sang all the female parts.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
She's an awesome singer.
Cool.
Huh.
And then Trooper was opening, so that was party band there. Like, it was awesome.
You know what? Paradise by the Dashboard Lights comes on the radio, and I will sing the whole song start to
Right?
front to back.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and you can't not.
And I don't care who's in the vehicle either. Like, it just happens.
What about you, Reggie?
It's a close tie between my first concert, which was, I'm going to say 1996, maybe 95, was the ACBC Hills Bells tour.
Yeah.
And specifically, remember about that concert was halfway through the show, the rest of the band went in, and Angus just did a guitar solo for like 15, 20 minutes, kept the crowd into it. The rest of the band went back, probably had a cocktail or two. Then they come back out, and Angus just rolls into the next song. And it was loud as hell. We were like way up in the nosebleeds at SaskTel Center at the time. Fantastic. And the other tie to it was the Tragically Hip Farewell Tour. I went to the show at Northlands Coliseum in Edmonton. That was a very unique experience. I'm a big Tragically Hip fan. Been to about 12 shows or so.
Nice.
Wow. But that one had a lot of emotion in it, and I mean, everybody knew it was the last time they were going to see the band live.
Yeah.
And see
You were
Gord
there,
Downey. It was fantastic.
So I went to one, small though, like completely different scale. It was downtown in, I don't know what it was called, the O'Brien's or Molson Center, where Coulter Wall would have just played.
Yeah, the Odeon.
Odeon, yeah. And saw the Trews, and it was it was super last minute because they're Canadian, I think. Hey?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so they're not very big, and you kind of got to like them or not. But they're gonna have they're gonna have half a dozen songs that you're gonna know for sure.
Yeah.
And they have more, but like it was just cool being in a small venue and where everyone in there was interested in coming to see them.
Yeah.
And everyone knew every song, and it was hard to tell if he was full on stage because his eyes were closed the entire time, or if he was just that into it. But that was another concert that I won't forget because I think I was relatively surprised at how much I enjoyed it, and I liked the Trews. And after that, like I liked them even more indefinitely.
Isn't that crazy how you go to a show and then you just get tuned into the music because it takes you back to being at the show live?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Trews is a good band. That's a band I don't think about very often.
No, they're pretty underrated, and they never
Yeah.
did get big, but I think they're relatively talented. Like,
very talented.
yeah.
Okay, let's do pop quiz. Place these 4 crops in order of most produced. Okay, ready? Potato.
Globally,
Yeah.
it's okay. Yeah, I'm assuming it's going to be globally.
Yep.
Give her. Yep.
Okay, potatoes, corn, wheat, rice.
So I mean, are we talking poundage? Are we talking land use?
I'm just going to go top of mind just based on volume things. I believe corn's number 1, which all my stuff's going to be way wrong. But corn's number one just because the way you see it get pumped out for feed. And I feel like a cow must eat more than a human, if I were to guess. So corn's going to be number one. I'm going to go with rice as number two, just based on the population of where it needs to go. And then
It's based on yield.
Okay.
I'm sticking with where my train of thought is here. And then I'm going to go with wheat just because, and then potatoes can come last. But I don't have anything to do with potatoes in my life, really. So,
Well, and I'm probably overthinking it because I'm thinking how many pounds of potatoes do you get off an acre versus pounds of corn versus pounds of wheat and rice?
that might be where the question's going, though. That's why I just
believe
thought
this is a bit of a trick question. So
punch it
I'm
up.
going to say I'm going to go rice, corn, wheat, potatoes.
Okay, well, you guys got the last one right. Potatoes is right for the last
Okay.
place, for fourth. Number one was corn.
Okay.
Good.
Woo!
Number two was wheat.
Oh yeah.
And then three was rice. And four potatoes.
I almost nailed that.
Yeah, you were
pretty
close. Yeah, good job. Okay, the word canola is derived from which two words?
I'll defer because I think everyone learns that. Reggie, what do you got?
Do you know this answer?
Absolutely. Everybody
Well,
knows this
the,
answer. Everybody knows this answer.
Canada,
Yes.
and I'm going to say linola.
Close. Oil.
Oil.
Yeah.
You guys knew that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, so not everybody knew that? You get a mulligan because you're not from here.
I guess so.
I've
Yeah,
never
I
heard that
guess so,
question
yeah.
before.
Really?
No.
I'd like to know where I learned that. I don't know where I learned that, but when someone told me that, I was like, huh, how original. You know, like, you learn, what was it called before? Rape. Yeah. Oh, what's the difference? Like, nothing really, not much.
So why didn't they call it canola?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because
It doesn't roll off your tongue.
not really. No.
Canola was
Canola.
like, how original.
It's time for Now You Know. It's the part of the program where we talk to people, experts in their field, various varieties and various areas of farming. And today we're talking with Shaun Gettis, the Vice President of Sales from Flaman. Today we're going to talk about grain dryers. Now, grain drying has been around for a long time. And a lot of growers, especially those farther north, are aware of its usefulness. Shaun, talk to us about what you've encountered when it comes to the grain dryer use cases.
I see a grain dryer in two different ways. One is a disaster response tool. So all of a sudden you can't get your crop off, it's wet and you don't know what to do, and it'll kind of save your butt so you can get it off and in the bin and dry and safe. But the way we're discovering is the people that have grain dryers are using them more as a management tool. And in saying that, so there's a whole bunch of things that feed into why this is a management tool for a customer. So there's one customer I know that has had one for 3 years. He bought it as a disaster response tool because he just needed to get crop off.
Yeah.
Then he discovered that he can grade up. He can go hit his derm like early. When it's ready, and run it through the dryer. And then the result was he was getting a better grade. He got his crop off sooner. He bought himself a larger harvest window. Didn't need that fourth combine and the fourth man and all this stuff that goes around with that.
Right.
He had more time. And then then the result is the people that are buying the grain, let's say the derm in this example, are bugging him on him. And there's incentives because he's got it off early and his grade's solid and they want it. And so he was benefiting from that as well. So he benefited with grade. He benefited with having it off a little earlier. He benefited in manpower way, and he benefited in not needing an additional asset such as a combine or another truck maybe.
Do you find most people purchase a dryer as disaster relief and then shift into using it as a management tool? Or are there people out there that buy a dryer strictly looking just to farm better and are open-minded to the thought of it being a management tool and maybe opening up the beginning window of harvest as opposed to having to deal with it? and window of harvest?
So I think that depends. That's a loaded question.
I'm full of loaded questions, just so you know. If you give me a yes or no answer, I'm going to be just choked because I will not ask a question that has a yes or no answer.
So, Mitch, in northern, I'm just going to talk about Saskatchewan. In northern Saskatchewan, harvest tends to be a little bit later and a little tougher. And as you go north, you'll see more frequency of dryers in yards because they know they need it as a management tool.
And is that because the harvest window is just that much shorter?
It is, and the conditions are a little tougher.
Yeah.
And as you go south, you'll see less and less. But what I'm noticing is as people discover the value of having that tool, management tool in your yard, that the migration of dryers are working south.
Yeah.
And it has a lot to do, again, with people, with machinery capacity and harvest windows.
Is there a commodity that a dryer works best on, or is there a commodity that a dryer is most commonly used for?
So not all dryers are the same and they do different things. But as a rule, it's your cereals that are most commonly put through a dryer. Mm-hmm. They're the easiest to manage through a dryer. You can put pulses through, you can put canola through, but as a rule, it's primarily used as for cereals in Saskatchewan, from what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So, if someone's considering a dryer, what sort of considerations does a customer need to take into consideration when they want to put one into their handling facility?
So beyond the type of dryer, just a basic dryer itself, there's a number of things to consider. The first one is you need to know where you want to put it, and you need to know a few things. Do you have the available electricity or power to run that? As farms have evolved, there are fans, there's all different things going on in a yard that can really max that out. And so you just need to be aware of the availability of power. Most new yards have three-phase power with an abundance, but some of the older yards, they're kind of tapped out. If you're running some fans, a 200 amp service isn't going to work.
Right.
The next thing is fuel. So a dryer needs fuel to produce the heat. And so ultimately, if you had enough volume of natural gas, that would be the ideal situation. Mm-hmm. But we do have the alternative of using propane, which needs to be hauled in. The final thing you need to consider is how you're going to get grain in and what you're going to do with the grain when it goes out.
Right.
And there's all different types of ways to manage that. You can put a dryer in an existing site with things like a Willenga to get rid of the Willenga blower system to distribute the grain into different bins, or bucket elevators into a stack or a six-pack, or however you want to say it.
Right.
Or you can very simply use EMD augers for an in and out of a wet bin into the dryer, and then into a dry bin. And then there's lots of planning. Not everyone wants to do the whole smear at once. We find that people are approaching it from a phased approach. Mm-hmm. So they'll start building the foundation of their yard site, and then a plan to evolve it over time as their needs change, or they can afford it.
Mm-hmm. So then you have to take into consideration how many bushels an hour we want to handle, how many bins we want to fill, all that, and then be able to expand that for the future.
You bet. I was just actually talking with a farmer the other day, and he had a more of a simple setup, and he had a 10,000 bushel wet bin, and that wet bin and his 3 combines a day in his area he could keep up. Mm-hmm. And then he'd run it through the rest of the day, or the night, I'm sorry, and then in the morning it'd be empty.
Right.
And he could get going again. So every needs, if you're running 5-6 combines, you're going to need different capacity, and then you're going to have to know how you're going to get that grain away. If you're in the middle of harvest and if you have a 10,000 bushel bin feeding wet bin, and then you have a 10,000 bushel dry bin, that's not necessarily going to work if you don't have the capacity to get it away and you want to continue to use a dryer.
And there you have it. Thanks, Shaun. We're going to move on to the last segment of our show today, and that's an interview with our special guest. Our special guest today is Roy Ritchie. How are you doing today, Roy?
Just like they say in the Old Testament, I'm fine.
Well, let's maybe start back in
Beginning?
back at the beginning. We'll go back into your childhood. What was it like growing up for you, Roy?
Well, I grew up on a farm 7 to 18 miles away from anywhere, and did a pretty good life. Drove some great cars and wrecked a few and had a lot of fun.
What would the vintage of these cars be, Roy?
Let's just say they're older than you.
Could you consider them muscle cars?
Absolutely.
How expensive was fuel back then?
Well, all I know is that you could take a girl, go to a drive-in, fill the car up full of gas again. After the movie, you could go to the Dog and Suds, have 2 meals, and still have change. Oh, and drink 12 beer and still have change left from $20. So does that date me?
Well, not exactly, but you're right. That is a time in the world before I was alive.
Where was Dog and Suds, and was it licensed?
No.
Okay.
It was not licensed, but it was right across the street from the high school
In
Rosetown.
Rosetown. Right on. So whereabouts was your farm then?
We were 18 miles from Rosetown, 7 miles from Zelandia, and 11 miles from Harris.
What would one of your first memories be?
I think probably moving cattle when I was young, and we had to move our cattle to pastures that were about 7 miles, 8 miles away, without big trailers that we've got now, and so we did it by horseback.
Did you have a horse?
Absolutely. Had a couple of good ones too.
When's the last time you rode a horse?
Last time I rode a horse, 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I still can do it. Don't like it, but I still can do it.
Now, you grew up with a fairly large family. How many siblings did you have?
I had 6. I had 3 brothers and 3 sisters.
And where do you fit in the group?
Second youngest. So that
Almost
meant,
the baby.
so by the time that I needed money, all the older ones were gone.
Yeah. And what about your parents? What's some of your earlier memories of your mom and dad?
My dad was a farmer and a cattleman. He wore a cowboy hat every single day, wherever he went, and his nickname was CPR.
Why CPR?
My dad's name was Charles Peter Ritchie. He wrote his initial CPR, and it just stuck. So when vanity plates came out, he got CPR 1 before the railroad decided that they needed it. My mother was a teacher and basically homeschooled us when we couldn't make it through math in high school. And hardworking individuals, hardworking family, just a little crazy around the edges.
Do you think the hardworking is one of the traits that you gained from your parents that brought you to where you are today?
Absolutely. There was always a deep down need to be busy, to work, to be part of. And that's what came from my parents and their parents before them. Both my grandparents and my great-grandparents homesteaded in Saskatchewan in the early 1900s and have been there ever since.
When you got in to be a teenager, were your parents fairly disciplinarian? Did you get in trouble lots?
Oh, I was in trouble lots, but not generally there. I used to drive fast, so the police and I had an ongoing relationship. They would stop me and give me a ticket, and I would go and pay it, and then I would drive fast. And we continued that on for some time.
I feel like you still drive fast. Like, there may or may not have been a ticket in the last 365 days that...
I got the opportunity to try out a pretty good car, and I won't tell you how fast I was going, but the muscle cars of the 60s didn't go this fast.
So, Roy, you're sober now, right?
Yeah.
How long you been sober for?
42 years.
40.
Well done.
Yeah. So
I stopped when I was 24.
So there was a story that you once told me, and this is probably, I'm going to say 15 years ago. And if it wasn't when you quit drinking, it was right before you decided to quit drinking.
I think I know the story you mean, but I went to the bar on a Thursday, late, like 10 o'clock, knowing that you can't get drunk in 2 hours. And the next thing I know, it was Tuesday. And I was a little ways away from home. I was waking up into the bright sunshine, and it was like February. And it was hot, and I was looking up at a sign that says Houston 100. And I have no idea how I got there. But my steel trap mind picked that all out. Radio said it was Tuesday. I had money in my wallet, and when I phoned my boss and said I probably wouldn't be in today, he said, "That's okay, you're not coming back anyway," and another job gone. But I went on to the Astrodome. It's cool.
You figured while you were there, you might as well just make the best of it.
What can you do?
So is that, similar things like that led you to say, okay, enough's enough. I've got to quit. I've got to get my life in order.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I did a lot of not very pleasant things in my life, and it just had to stop.
What was the hardest part of that process?
Hardest part probably was saying that I needed help to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And once I got through that part, it got better.
In a time where it wasn't common to ask for help or not looked upon as
not at my age.
Positive, yeah.
There were maybe a half a dozen of us in the province that were my age or younger.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That had stayed sober for any length of time.
Good for you.
And at that age, there's a lot of social pressure to stay in that sort of lifestyle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It when you're from a small town, like small, it's pretty easy when you drive up to the place where they have the AA meetings and get out there without having, look who's going now.
Getting back into your earlier years, what's the first job you had when you got out of school or got off the farm?
I had a number of jobs that I did for winters or summers or, short-term seasonal kind of work. I drove a grader for 6 months. I installed flooring for 2 years. I worked for different farmers. I did a lot of different things. I spent a winter working in the coal mines in BC. That's a terrible place to be. But
I feel like you have some stories just about that.
I kind of want to hear more about that, actually.
I don't think I want to tell you some of those. So,
Oh, yeah.
again, involves crossing borders.
So what path led to you to Flaman's? How did you eventually end up here?
I was just getting going in farming. Had taken on quite a bit of debt when the 1989 hit, 88 and 89, and the drought, and couldn't get it. So I left the farm I sold my share to my brother, and he continued and still does to this day. And I left and had to go somewhere else, and went back to school a bit, got some business training, and by accident, I put a resume in at Flaman's. They're agriculture. I know something about agriculture, so I came. One of the jobs I had before, though, was working at a grain cleaning facility. It's where I learned how to set machines and run them, and I was taught by somebody who was really, really good. And then when I came into the city, I dropped a resume off here, and I don't know whether it was Warren saw it or Don saw it, but they decided that I should have a job.
What year was that in?
That would have been in 2000.
And how did that interview go?
Well, Don Flaman did my interview and decided that I could have a place to work here. And my first day of work would be the farm show in Regina. And so my first day of work was the 11th of June. And I climbed in my car early in the morning and drove down there and I said, well, what do I do when I get there? He says, go ask for Warren. And so I shadowed him through the farm show, selling machinery that I didn't know anything about. Different types of cleaners than I've ever seen before. And so I learned on the job.
Grain cleaner specifically. You've
Grain
always stuck in
cleaners-
the grain cleaner. Yeah, okay.
Grain cleaners specifically. I was trying to sell Jesdal grain cleaners. And that was my first taste of Flaman's.
Do you remember your first sale?
My first sales were screen sales, and there were so many. I
Do
don't.
you remember your first big sale?
I remember some of them. Some of them were memorable, but I've dealt with so many really good customers over the years that have come back to me and trust me, and I become some sort of a trustworthy person in their world, dealing with cleaners and what they do and how they work. And picking a favorite or would be not realistic anyway.
What do you think it takes to build that trustworthiness you're talking about?
It's honesty. I don't sell things to people just because they think they want it. I find out for sure that of what they're doing, and then give them the options. And sometimes I didn't make a sale, but the next year they come back and see me because they trusted what I said. And I've tried to work that in my whole business life, or work with customers. I try to do the best I can and be as honest as possible. And it works out. It always works out.
Did you think 20 plus years ago you'd still be working at Flaman?
I don't know if all I know is that time I really needed a job. I was married and I had I had one very small child and needed to be at work.
What's something that happened in, let's say, the first half or the first decade of you working at Flaman that you wouldn't get away with in the last or second decade of you working at Flaman?
There's a number of those, and I don't know if the statute of limitations is over on those.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, you're good. We won't tell Pam. Pam isn't gonna be listening.
Yeah,
to this, maybe.
there's sarcastic and wit, and we may have picked on people just because they were there more than anything. I remember being part of a conspiracy against another employee where we loaded his car up with a full load of old flyers so that the car wouldn't back up if you could have got in it anyway. It was entertaining watching him try to, and I was talking to him when he was going to his car at the end of the day, and he opens the door to his car and just this mountain of paper slide out. but we didn't do that.
Yeah, that's not on record. We didn't have security cameras back then.
Oh, there were a few things that happened.
I feel like I remember a story where when someone left the office that night, their desk was in the office on the ground, and when they got to work in the morning,
I heard that when that guy got back to work the next morning, it was screwed to the ceiling. It was kind of hard to keep his chair and work from, but it was still in the building.
What did he think of that?
I'm pretty sure he thought it was bad and then funny. We did help him get it down. There was another time that we got another employee. I think I still have a photograph of it when we saran wrapped him to his chair and just kind of left him out in the front for people to view. Mitch?
If I recall, that front, what's the word, like foyer?
Yeah. Covered
in glass. Even in a minus 30 day, it's about plus 35 degrees in there. It's just from memory, though.
They rescued you.
Yeah, they rescued me a few hours later.
There was a few things. One of my favorites was when we filled the desk drawer with water and goldfish. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to get it into the drawer, but it's really hard to get it out, apparently.
I recall a time, and I won't point fingers at you, but I'm pretty sure you were quite involved.
I was never involved. I was a witness at best.
A bystander, an innocent bystander with your camera out. Was there a time something happened with like a Cadbury chocolate egg?
Oh yeah, that was. I didn't have anything to do with that one except witness. Cadbury chocolate eggs are little and they're multicolored, and a robin's egg is little and multicolored. And if you put them in the same bowl, and with someone who just comes by every time and takes a Cadbury egg, sooner or later they're going to get to the one that you want them to.
You just got to try not to laugh too hard so they know it was you.
Could you imagine sticking that in your mouth and taking a chomp?
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine, Reggie.
Yeah.
I didn't even hold the camera for that one.
Okay, did you actually put this thing in your mouth?
I have a video of this entire event happening, and in the first, I'd say the first couple seconds was like a ton of excitement until it wasn't chocolate. It was very liquid. And then there was a ton of confusion. And then there was a ton of chaos. And then it all leveled out.
It all went sideways for a while.
For those listening, we may have already had some people pull over and dry heave out the side of their tractor or car at this point.
Yeah, that was a real life thing, though. And that video was probably taken on, like, I don't know, a Motorola Razr, like the first phone that had a camera in it. Yeah, good times. Again, don't tell Pam.
Okay, just to switch gears here for a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about...
I can talk about anything.
Let's talk about the Flaman culture. When you first started, it was different location, mostly different people. How has that progressed over time?
Oh, when I started with Flaman's, I think there were 13 or 14 employees.
Total or out of that location?
Total. Here in Saskatoon.
Oh, in the Saskatoon location. Yeah. Got it.
At most. There was a couple in the trailer shop, Paul and Al, fixtures in Flaman's, Betty, and Dawn, of course, was here every day. And so it was a very small, intimate family kind of a business. And you did all the jobs because there wasn't anybody else to do them. So you ended up hooking up trailers, and you ended up, selling at one side and hooking up a trailer on the other. It became a kind of a home away from home, a really family-oriented time. And I think that over the years, and we changed locations. Like my first office was the kitchen table in a secondary location that I was working from. It wasn't a Commodore 64 computer, but it was close. And we were making screens with nibblers and a hand rivet gun, or a hand stapler, putting them together. And before we used metal shears even. And like everybody worked. And it progressed to, I can't even tell you how long it's been since I put a staple into a frame, but it's progressed to more and more employees. And I think I counted the other day that I had 12 or 13 different offices since I've been with Flaman. And shift gears, and it's still that way. You still shift gears to do what's necessary and be as much of a help as you can be to everybody in Flaman that needs to get something done. Still very family oriented. There's just more people. I don't know how many employees there are in Saskatoon now.
Well, I started a little after you because when I got here, I think there was 20 to 30 in this Saskatoon location, and there's over 80 now just out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been some significant growth.
What have you seen change amongst customers in that span of time?
They get younger. I don't know why.
Yeah. What about their process, their business? What's changed in the ag market since you've been here?
I guess when I started, the normal customer for coming in to see us would be 2,000 to 5,000 acres. And now we're dealing with people that are 10,000 to 40,000 and larger. Big operations, and that takes some different equipment, some different solutions. I guess it's no surprise to anybody in the ag industry that farms are getting bigger, and we just changed with the times. Mm-hmm. We still grow grain, we still clean it, we still get it to port.
So you talked about solutions. And earlier on, you had mentioned about talking to the customer and finding out what they need. Kind of go through that process of how you get the information you need to find that solution for the customer.
Well, my first question that I ask of anybody is, what do you want the machines to do? What do you want the end product to be? Then the next one would be, how much of this are we talking about? Oh, I want to clean grain at 2,000 bushels an hour, but I've only got 10,000 bushels to clean. We get a very massive machine to use for a couple of hours. That we try to balance that out and get down to the basics of what they want and need, because it's not always the same. It's not always the same thing, and I won't say that I lead them to their answer, but there's pros and cons to almost any process, and so you lead them through and let people decide for themselves about how deep or how far they want to go into a process, and based on cost and quality. And sometimes you just say you're better off to get somebody to come in and clean that 1,000 bushels of grain. It's easier and cheaper for you. It's one thing I could sell them a machine, but it'll be in a fence corner before we're done, and that's not what I want. I don't ever want to overextend somebody for that.
I'll switch gears a little bit and just ask you some off-the-wall questions.
My elevator doesn't go all the way to the top. So.
Just halfway there. That's all we have to do. Where's one place you'd like to go that you have never been before?
One place that I would like to go that I've never been, Austria, I think is one of the places I'd like to go.
Why?
Oh, history and beauty and culture and, there, and Scotland, which is just mean, vicious, and full of Scotsmen.
So which one of those two places do you have ancestors in then?
My wife's ancestors are from Germany, Austria, and my ancestors are from Scotland. And so I'm a little drawn to both.
So your wife has culture and you're a little ruthless? Is that?
Well, my mother had culture and my dad was a little ruthless. So
What's your philosophy in life, Roy?
my philosophy of life, oh my, to be a benefit among whom we live. Without that, there is no freedom. You can be your own, I'm me and I'm number one and all of that. But the reality of life has more to do with what you can do for others than it is what you do for yourself. And I think the older I get, the more I believe that.
Yeah, that goes really against kind of the zeitgeist right now, is that everybody's out for number one. I want what I want and I want it now. And what you're describing goes directly against that.
No, you can be number one and also be a benefit to other people. You just have to be honest and true about what you do or how you present yourself. Because when I come to work, I like coming to work. And when I leave here, I like going home to my family and to everything there. And in spite of the trials and tribulations of life, I still like it. And I still enjoy simple things. There's nothing quite like sitting out on the back deck in the summer and smelling the barbecue. And it's pretty simple. Family and friends and just being a benefit to people around me.
I could probably vouch for you on that. I don't know how many years you and I have worked together for, but it's over 10 by now. And I would say the one thing that, like for me, waking up and coming to work has always been a treat is that you always knew, no matter what kind of day it was, there would be someone there, at least one person named Roy, that would help you out no matter what you had coming down the pipe in the day. It didn't matter what I had coming down the pipe or what you had coming down the pipe. You were always there to support someone that needed help. And I haven't seen you waver from that since the day I met you.
I try.
Yeah.
Yeah, and similar to your point, I mean, you obviously love coming to work because you're here after 7 every morning, and you're the one that puts the coffee in the coffee pot, and you kind of create this culture where even though we don't start work till 8 o'clock, generally we're all here at 7:30, at least a few of us, and we have a coffee, we have a little BS session, and then we go on with our day, and it's a great way to start the day.
Yeah, you can hardly be sarcastic without showing up here in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. You may have already answered this question, but I did have written down a question is, what is an ideal weekend for you, Roy? What do you like to do?
Oh, that's changed a lot over the years, but I guess maybe from working here year after year, the sheer amount of phone calls that come in here is staggering. And the one thing I don't want to do on the weekends is answer the phone. And not because I don't like or I'm willing to help, but man, I get tired of talking on the phone. And think I've had a hoarseness in my throat since 1994, just because of that. I like being home. I love ball. I would go almost to the ends of the earth to watch fastball or baseball.
When did that start?
That is, if you went back, it would be the World Junior Baseball Championships that were held in Kindersley. And, oh man, in the, who was there? George Bell. I think one of the Alomars. These kids were just young and were coming up and going to be somebody, and to watch that high-end ball was, with my dad especially. He was a ball fan, would go anywhere to see one, and you'd have to be a really big ball fan to go to Hazlet to watch ball.
1984.
84.
Yeah.
It was, we went, my dad and I, and lots of times.
That's a big deal for Kindersley.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did they ever land that?
Great volunteers, wonderful ball fields, and every little town sponsored a team.
So would that have been juniors? Would have been like 16 and under?
No, that would have been 18,
Okay.
18, 19-year-olds, and kids that hadn't been seen by anybody,
Yeah.
coming out of Puerto Rico and Guatemala or Cuba, and to see some of those players and watch them on TV a few years later was kind of neat.
When you watch your son play ball, and your son still plays a lot of ball, do you contain yourself in the stands?
Absolutely not.
That's just something he's had to get used to?
Yeah, I think I was blessed with a couple of children that were adamant and ecstatic about doing things. My daughter was a dancer, and I would go anywhere to watch her. And my son played hockey and ball, and I went everywhere to watch that. And I was loud, and I was probably embarrassing, but I believe that that's part of what a parent's duty is to embarrass their children a little bit, to make them humble.
Yeah.
And they know I'm there.
If they were sitting here right now and we asked them, what's it like having your dad at a sporting event, whether it's a dance recital or a ball game, what would they say?
It's embarrassing. I don't know. I hope they look back on it and say he was there.
Yeah.
And it's fun to watch good ball or good sports, good dance. Just to see the people that they grow up as to be. Because I'm proud of my children that way, and how they work with themselves and how they present themselves to the world.
So how old are your kids now?
22 coming up, and just coming up to 21.
And what are they busy with?
Justin just got back from the U20 fastball.
Nice.
Nationals?
Yeah.
Yep.
I know he'd like to have done better, but that's the way it works. And my daughter is moving to Calgary to work and find a little bigger audience, or a little bigger bit of the world.
What is one thing that people may misunderstand about you, Roy?
Just the depth of sarcasm and wit.
I thought we had a good grasp on that, but apparently not.
Well, I know that there are people who just turn their head and walk away puzzled.
That's usually because you do a pretty good job of not laughing after you say something. You just walk away, leaving them there puzzled.
Well,
And everybody else is he serious? I don't even know.
You can't. The hysterical laughter gives you away if you're trying to be sarcastic. And
That's why you leave and go find somewhere to giggle.
Get you a shirt that says sarcasm, just another service we offer.
What are you the most thankful for, Roy?
my family, then my job, my faith. I've tried very hard in my life to be a person that I like. And I tried very hard in my life to raise children that other people like. Because I don't think it's fair that parents have to have to like their children. But I know that when my kids are out, they are good people.
Well, the one thing that I'm very thankful for is to be able to show up for work and to have a coffee with you in the morning and get the opportunity to experience working with somebody that's been in this industry for 20 plus years. And we have a lot of young staff in this building, and they would all definitely mirror my sentiments. And we learn from you every day, and I think we will continue to learn from you over the course of time as long as you allow us to be living in your shadow. So I thank you very much for that, Roy.
I think just one more thing to add is to the young people in this organization is I'm glad they're here too. I'm ecstatic that I don't want the things that I've taken a lifetime to learn go down the tubes because it's my end. These people are hard workers and good souls. And I'm glad if I can help.
Absolutely. So how we want to end this podcast, Roy, is just going around the room and asking you a quick series of questions, and just what comes off the cuff is the answer we're looking for. So are you ready?
Well, we can try.
Okay, first question. If you had 3 wishes, what would you wish for?
Money, time, 3 more wishes.
That works out well with the next one. If you were to throw away love or money, what would it be?
I like the answer I heard just today. If I don't answer love, it's going to cost me a lot of money.
What's the most beautiful place you've ever seen?
Oh, my. The Karoonda Station in North Queensland, Australia.
Nice.
Is magnificent. Right next to the waterfall, by the way.
What was your fondest memory of high school?
Oh, drinking was involved, I'm sure.
So no memories.
So, no memories.
What's your favorite TV show, Roy?
Big Bang Theory. Still is.
Nice.
I've switched up a decade from MASH, but...
What's the strangest thing in your refrigerator?
In my refrigerator? Oh.
It doesn't have to belong to you.
Right now, there is a paintbrush. How about that?
Strange enough.
It'd be stranger if he ate it.
Yeah, I know.
With your attention.
What flavor is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest barbecue brush I've ever seen.
Repainting the bathroom. So there's you wrap it in saran wrap and put it in the fridge, and it keeps.
It doesn't get hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today, Roy.
Oh, you're welcome, I think.
Thank you for listening to Flaman Connect. For Mitch Flaman and Regan Kuntz, I'm Trevor Grindy. Join us next time. Talk to you soon.